Welcome to CivilNet. Today we're joined by Canadian-Armenian entrepreneur Patrick Elliot, who was recently repatriated to Armenia with his wife and other relatives. So, Patrick, thank you very much for your time.
Thanks for having me.
Let's start with a very simple question. Why did you decide to repatriate to Armenia?
It was always in the works. I was living in Poland for the last 5 years, and I've been coming very often. As you know, I have relatives here already, and it was so close. And every time we come, we're really enjoying it. This includes my wife. Yeah, we were more and more thinking about it, and when it came time to start working on a family, we see how child-friendly Armenia is, how safe it is. And I just felt that in Poland, the temptation to have my kids raised as Slavs would be too strong, especially with their mom being Polish and so on. There's nothing wrong with it. I just felt that the Armenianness wouldn't be there. Whereas here, obviously, it's a given that my kids will be able to speak Armenian. The English level is incredible here now, and Russian as well. So they'll have all of their bases covered. And then the war happened, and that, let's say, turned up the urgency, because I've understood that if we want a future for the homeland, that we all have a part to play. But it's not entirely selfless. There's a lot of amazing advantages in Armenia. The cost of living is unbeatable. So far, we've found some great private healthcare. Food is great, safety, like I mentioned, and ease of doing business, ease of meeting interesting people, starting up IT projects. So far, the sense of community I've found in the month I've been here, I haven't found it anywhere, including Poland, where I've been living for 5 years.
You said your wife is Polish. Congratulations also on your marriage. But does she like it, as a non-Armenian?
Yeah, my wife is, first of all, she was born and raised in Lithuania. I don't know if you know a lot of the history, but they're kind of similar in scope to Armenians in Georgia, where it's slightly different. They've been there a really long time. They speak their own kind of dialect. There's some friction with the locals and so on. So she's also Russian speaking, and the culture is not that different. It's funny, I was there for Easter, and her whole family was there. Of course, they had the bottle of Ararat cognac on the shelf, and the men were outside with cigarettes, and they were making the chorovads, and in this case, it's Polish kielbasa, and there's all the salads on the table. And I looked to my wife, and I said, if all of your family members had black hair, I would feel like I'm in Armenia right now. The sense of family, sense of community. So it's not that alien to her. She's comfortable in Russian, and she's comfortable in English as well. And she's making her own friends, and she works also in IT, and she works remotely. So far, so good. We'll see.
Another question I find interesting to ask repatriates, to not only say why you want to live in Armenia, but is there anything about not wanting to live in Canada?
Yeah, definitely.
And what is involved in that?
Oh gosh, I don't know. I just haven't found Canada to be that interesting a place. Since I graduated, Montreal felt a little bit small for me, so I wanted to leave. And I just am not really pulled to go back. There's a few things, but especially as an entrepreneur, this is very subjective, obviously, and I have my own values, but I just don't feel that it's a very welcoming place for entrepreneurs and for business owners. The cost of living is high, the taxes are high, the regulations are high. There's always these little issues which I'm not facing in Armenia. So there's huge advantages here from a business perspective. And if you can't match resources as a country, then the only other option is to make yourself competitive by simplifying everybody's life. And I think that this is one of the main draws for me for Armenia, right? I'm not some great patriot. Sometimes I do have frictions here. There's some stuff I'm not a particular fan of. Will I stay here forever? I don't know. I'll take it one day at a time. But from a business standpoint, I think there's some tremendous opportunities in Armenia. And I think that if diasporans don't tap into it, foreigners definitely will. And I'm increasingly seeing more and more Indians. I have a good Latvian friend here. We have some Russian friends. My Ukrainian business partner just relocated here. So there's a lot of big advantages that are just waiting to be exploited, and I think that's an amazing thing, and it's a very dynamic time right now in Armenia.
And last time we did an interview, you spoke about an initiative, the digital visa, which I find very interesting, and I think a lot of our watchers don't know much about it. Can you explain what is a digital visa and why Armenia may benefit from having that initiative?
Sure. So for me, one thing that I've understood is that we're never going to compete with Georgia in terms of tourism. We don't have the sea. We don't have the incredible high peaks of the Northern Caucasus. There's nothing wrong with that. I'm just saying that let people go to Georgia for tourism. But the way Armenia competes is this is the place where you come to get rich. This is a place where you come to do business, where you come to start a company. No one's going to bother you. You can open up a bank account. You can do business in Russian rubles, in euros, in USD. The official business languages in Armenia, by the way, are Russian, English, and Armenian, which means I can do invoicing in English, which I can't do in the EU, which is a headache because I need to, my clients are all American, so I need to translate into English every single one of my invoice every single month. So there's a lot of huge advantages, and what I've come to realize is that what's going to happen with our IT companies is, and it's already starting to happen actually, but in the next 5 years we're going to hit critical mass. We're going to hit this ceiling where either the companies have grown beyond a certain point and they're going to need foreign staff to come and train their teams. They're going to need some expertise that we can't find in Armenia. So either they're going to have to bring people over or they're going to move to Silicon Valley. I would personally like to avoid that. I think the best thing is to keep them here in Armenia, but we're going to need foreigners to come. And I think this is a really, really good thing. I mean, if you look at, for example, Estonia is a really, we use Israel as an example a lot, but Estonia is an excellent example. It's the only post-Soviet country that is not just reaching EU standards of living. Within the next 5 years, it's going to graduate to Nordic country status. So it's going to shake off its communist past and not just become successful. It's going to be, the poster child of a successful country. Why did they do this? Because they won the geographical lottery. They have neighbors that aren't trying to exterminate them. I get that. But they also are in a very good nexus where they're close to Swedes, they're close to Finns, they're close to Germans, they're in the EU, right? So they have all of these new ideas coming in. Armenia, unfortunately, is landlocked and we're stuck with closed borders. So we need to bring these new ideas in, whether from the diaspora or whether from foreigners. So the idea is to push the government to create a 1-year remote worker visa, especially nowadays with the lockdowns and so on, and even the post-lockdown world. A lot of people don't want to go back to the office, and a lot of people are successfully working from anywhere in the world. So the idea is to bring them here, make it as easy as physically possible. There are many countries that have done this successfully. Of course, there's Greece, there's Croatia, and Portugal, who are the three that are really known for this. But actually, our neighbor Georgia did it in a pretty interesting way. I'm not sure how popular it is, but you can apply in English. It takes 2 weeks to get a response. It is totally free. You don't have to pay for it. You just need to prove that you have 2,000 euros in monthly income plus international health insurance, and that's it. You can stay in the country for 1 year and live and work and enjoy. We need to do the same thing. We need to make it as easy as physically possible to have entrepreneurial-minded people, right, who are going to come here, who are going to set up businesses, who are going to employ local Armenians, who are going to exchange ideas, and who are going to eventually get Armenia back on its feet.
And what can Armenians, you speak about foreigners a lot, which is very interesting, but Armenians across the world, in particular diasporans, what, in your opinion, can they do right now to help Armenia?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think that we need a radical rethinking of our relationship amongst Armenians. So this is going to be controversial to some, but I'm going to call it like it is. Duty doesn't work. For 30 years, we've been telling, diaspora. I grew up in Canada. I went to Armenian school. I went to Patrick Scouts. I grew up in these environments. We did tons of fundraising. We marched every April 24th. We came here in the summer and built houses in Vanadzor. I did my time, so to speak. And the dynamic has always been, you need to help Armenia. Why? Just because. We speak a different dialect, we don't understand each other, you're going to come for a summer, you'll have some khorovads, you'll drink vodka, you'll have a good time, and you'll go home and that's it. You go back to being Canadian-American or whatnot. That doesn't work. It doesn't create any kind of real change in the country. And after the war, the urgency is, let's say, 3 times as much as before. So we need a change, and we need to change the way that we're communicating. The idea from Armenia should just simply be, come here, set up a business, get rich, be selfish, live well, and you're still going to help the country much more than if we're saying, oh, you need to come to Armenia, you need to help it, it's your duty. No. If it's a duty, it's not love. It's better to come here. It's better to say, look, let's get real. Everyone's motivated by selfish interests. So here's where you can live for really cheap. You can have an amazing lifestyle for what you're making, barely scraping by in LA or Boston or Montreal or Paris or whatnot. You can get property. I was looking at a house in Dilijan for $80,000 US. It's a two-story, 4-bedroom home in the mountains. Like, it's absolutely stunning. You can't afford that back in Canada. So the messaging isn't there. Even after you had me on the first interview, I had a bunch of people reaching out going, I didn't even know that. I'd love to come to Armenia. I just didn't think I can make some money. So there's all these vacancies. If you have a language skill, if you have a tech skill, if you have any kind of skill whatsoever, come here. Why not? Where you're helping your homeland if you're feeling so inclined to do so. Or if you want to be totally selfish, come to a place where you can live for really, really cheap. You can spend money like crazy. You can go out to a restaurant every night if that's what you feel like doing. You can get to the mountains in 30 minutes. You can get to the lake in 25 minutes. You can go down south to God knows where in 3 hours. It's amazing. There's no other place like this.
So what do you think of Armenia's business environment at the moment? What prospects do you think it has? How do you see the situation? And moreover, what are some issues you see? Some things that maybe can be alleviated, some things you've noticed about it?
Yeah, there's, in terms of strengths, like I said, the cost of living, the low regulations, right? So for example, if you're starting an IT business, your first 50,000 US in profits is tax-free. I think there's no payroll tax for the first year. There's all kinds of advantages. If you have a freelance business, it's 5% yearly, like a total tax. Turnover tax, sorry, is the word. There's 5% dividends tax on foreign income, which means if your clients are outside of Armenia, as in my case, I just pay 5% tax, which to me is unbeatable. That's amazing. You get to keep 95% of your income. The banking is very good here. I just opened 2 different bank accounts, which is like 2 different banks. So far, they're good. Their service is in English. I'm actually very impressed with the customer service so far in Armenia because I'm very demanding, and so far everyone's really nice. So there's some huge advantages. And I'll give you one of my favorite examples. I was at a bar last week, and there were about 30 people. It's a small basement lounge, and a friend of mine turns over to me, and we're talking about Armenia and so on. And he says, "Look around you. We're 30 people. Out of these 30 people, there are 6 startup founders and business owners. Where else are you going to find that kind of concentration?" The network is amazing. The ability to meet people, to connect, to have to create a project from scratch. Almost instantly. It's amazing. And Armenians have vision, they dream big, which is beautiful. In terms of weaknesses, it is still bureaucratic in many ways. It is still Soviet in many ways. I've done some consulting for local businesses, and the office environment is, I had a crash course in Armenian office dynamics, so there's some room for improvement. But that's okay. This is the kind of thing where this is what I was talking about, going back to my original point, where these things don't get solved by accident. It takes a small minority of very willful people to move the culture forward, right? It's always the outliers who end up creating real change. So we need, whether it's diasporans or foreigners, but we need these small outliers to come here to push the culture forward. These are things that can be corrected, and once they are corrected, there's no limit to what Armenia can accomplish. And the truth is that when you create a digital economy, you can't bomb a digital economy. So this creates, I mean, to me, the idea, and we're already seeing this happen, but this is the first time Armenia, people don't realize this, it's the first time Armenia has an actual middle class in 30 years. All these tech companies and these IT startups, but they create these ancillary services around them. Right, like my masseuse is blind. He costs $10 an hour, which is again unbeatable. He's amazing, but he has all of these tech founders as his clients. So he's able to support himself as a technically handicapped person because because we now have a middle class. We're able to afford these things that were previously luxuries. So this creates an entire network, an entire support system of ancillary services and so on that Armenia has never experienced before.
But a lot of people are concerned that all of this we're talking about, in terms of the situation with our neighbors, in particular Azerbaijan, that creates a sense of uncertainty, which investors and the business environment don't take too well to. I'm wondering what you think about that. Do you think that that is a factor that is being overlooked, maybe?
It's difficult to answer. I can't predict the future. We all experienced what's possibly the biggest nightmare any Armenian in living memory has ever experienced, probably since the 80s and maybe even since 1915. There's no question that the entire Armenian nation is traumatized. And I think that there's 2 ways we can deal with this. We can either collapse under the weight, or we can get serious, we can dust ourselves off, and we can make do with the cards we've been dealt. Yeah, I have no words, and I'm certain that neither does anybody in this room. It's unbelievably, unbearably painful. So to me, it's just about focusing on the future. What can we do better? What can we do differently? So is the situation unstable? Sure. But at the end of the day, no matter what a fervent nationalist you may be, or most pacifist, I don't care person, the answer always ends up being the same. If you care about the people, right, the Armenian people, if you care about the fact that I think 40% are living below the poverty line, well, what's the solution? A stronger economy. If you want a military, you want to be able to put up at least the semblance of a fight to deter our neighbors, you need an economy. If you want to be taken seriously on the world stage, you need an economy. You need to make people care. This is what I was saying earlier, where Armenia's messaging needs to be different. When the diaspora is funding highways over the years that go to Kelbajar, which guess what? Guess who's using that highway now? That 100 million, instead of treating Armenia like an infrastructure project. This isn't to criticize all the amazing work that a lot of diasporans have done. That's not what I'm saying. I'm saying that now is the time to reorient. Take that money, take those donations, and it's time to instead invest in startup initiatives you find interesting. Find interesting people and pay to educate them in La Sorbonne or HEC or send them to London School of Economics with a written notice that they come back to Armenia to help contribute here. We need to be more dynamic about the way that we're going about things, because at the end of the day, the largest coalition since the Second World War was when Saddam Hussein invaded Kuwait, a tiny, insignificant country that happened to be sitting on tons and tons of oil. We don't have oil, but we can become the world's, banking deposit. We can become, a business center. We can set up back offices and so on, so that we make the world care and we prevent this kind of thing from ever happening. So at the end of the day, you need an economy to make this stuff happen. And in order to have a functioning economy, you need a free, rights-respecting country. There is no other way. As a foreigner, I will not open a business here if I'm going to be dragged to court by a local and I know that there's a 99% conviction rate, as there is in China, for example. These two go hand in hand, prosperity and liberty. So the point is to turn Armenia into a place that is so free and so rich that instead of bombing us, our neighbors are going to want to actually come here and be part of our startups. This is what Israel does. We keep saying we admire Israel. We don't know why they're successful. Take a look at why they're successful. You'll see the answers right there.
And finally, Armenia's economy is growing once again. The central bank and also some of the ministries have revised up growth forecasts. Why do you think this is?
I think that the Armenian people are successful everywhere they go. There's a fantastic book that I recommend. Anybody read this, by Thomas Sowell. It's called Black Rednecks and White Liberals. He has an entire chapter on what he calls middlemen minorities. These are groups of people who are successful everywhere. They're diaspora. So of course he talks about the Jews in Europe. He talks about the Lebanese in Africa. He talks about the Chinese in South Asia and Armenians. We've been successful for God knows when. So why not in Armenia? Because if we're left to our own devices, if we're left free, we tend to be successful. We had a repressive, authoritarian regime up until very recently. Now, whether you like or hate this government, I don't know, I don't care. The fact of the matter is I can open a business, no one's going to bother me. And in fact, they're moving towards making it even easier for me to set up my business, to hire local Armenians. All of my employees are Armenian, by the way, and they're fantastic, and I pay them generously, and they're excellent workers. I think that we have all the potential in the world, and we have this rare chance to move ahead, despite all the trauma, despite what just happened in the last year. We have this rare chance to finally build a state that can be a viable state, that can be a prosperous state, that can be a place where people will want to come to rather than run away from. And I think that's something that we can't afford to lose.
Well, Patrick, thank you as always.
It's my pleasure.
And thank you for joining us on CivilNet.